Hello, it's been a very long time since I made a video, and today marks International Women's Day, and I think it's the best, um, the perfect time for me to reopen my channel and share my reflections on what I have learned womanhood means and how I define womanhood for myself. And I'll start by saying that as far back as I remember, I have always been engaged in fighting for women's rights, gender rights, all of that. I also, I'm the last of four girls, and so even though my dad never made mention of not having a son, um, we would hear comments from people saying, "Oh, when are you gonna have a son? When are you gonna have a son?" Um, but I never really thought so much about it. But later on, when I grew up and I realized that there was a difference, or there's a perceived difference in a female child and a male child and what each is worth, that's when I kind of understood why the comments were made. Um, One of the things I also remember, um, which was really connected to my role as a girl, was that uh, my parents used to argue about why I spend a lot of time with my books. I love studying, I love books, of course. And they were worried that I wouldn't learn how to cook and that my to be husband's parents would point fingers at my mother basically to say that she didn't raise me well. And it's now that I think about it, I understand that cooking as a skill is necessary for survival. But the fact that the main reason why they were worried was because of my prospects, my future prospects of finding a husband. So that goes back to my role as a woman in the household is to be uh, in the kitchen, basically. Um, but the question is that, I mean, I understand in a society which is patriarchal, um, and women's rights are not really at the forefront of issues, and you don't have so many opportunities to get the economic independence, then of course one of the ways to secure your independence, financial security, is to get married and be provided for by a husband or supported financially, even if you're working. Um, so over the years and being a student of gender, um, I have come across obviously Judith Butler, who is one of the most incredible pioneers in gender theory, where she distinguishes between female sex, that's the biological sex, and gender, which is society that is um, creating and um, construction, constructing these ideas of who a woman is. And then it kind of set in motion um, for the world at large to kind of think critically about gender and sex. Um, and in today's world, where you have people like Bobrisky, who's a famous Nigerian crossdresser, who is slowly transitioning and taking surgery to enhance his body to look more like what gender says a woman should look like, with boobs and butt. Then, you know, the question is, at least to me, is who defines the concept of womanhood, who defines who a woman is. And this debate is gonna go on and on and on as far as I don't know if we're ever gonna, you know, come to a consensus, at least in my lifetime. But also, as I transition from being a single woman um, to a married woman with children, and to a divorced woman with a kid, so have my ideas of womanhood also changed. And these have um, inspired my decisions on how I want to proceed further in my life. And the change in continents has also been a huge contributing factor in how I have changed my viewpoints on womanhood. Some of the traditional ideals that I grew up with are still there, but a lot of my values have changed. A lot of my perspective on things have really, really changed. And in addition to all the identities, um, and the main one being a black woman, also changes the trajectory of, you know, has changed the trajectory of my life. But I'm not going to go into details today. I think that for the first time in my life, I look at the celebration of Women's Day with a different lens than I have ever, because I have kind of been pushed into the gendered construction of womanhood so much that I really understand the constraints and the opportunities and the barriers that come with being a woman, and a black woman, an African woman. So these are just ramblings that I think about as I celebrate Women's Day. And I look forward to doing more videos to talk about my journey and what has happened in the last, I think, 6 years since I stopped YouTube. So happy Women's Day, and I'll see you soon.